Okay. Hopefully we're live. Hopefully that worked.
We're live.
Let me check.
We're
Let
alive.
me just double the check. Go to UBTubies.
UBTubies. OKKB.
I mean, well, it gave me an error saying that we weren't live. So, okay, we're live.
Seeing is believing.
Oh, there. So there it is. Watching ourselves. Oh, that's weird. Okay, so we were trying to think of something to talk about, and I was thinking,
Oh, man.
that maybe talking about comic books. I mean, we talk about storytelling and comics
Right.
all the time, but we don't, and we pepper in our stuff that we read and things like that growing up, and Marty just made an interesting comment. You know, he hasn't read a comic book in a long time. Why?
Why haven't I read a comic book in a long time? I don't know.
You old?
I don't know. It's
Is it just what old people
time.
don't do?
I mean, I read books. But I haven't read a comic book in a long time. But yeah, I don't know. No idea. I mean, I still like the superhero genre and stuff.
I haven't read a comic book for a while, but I have been buying some like graphic novel type of hardbound
Right.
type of book stuff. But the only bad part though is, well, this one's in English,
Mm-hmm.
but I have one back here that's in French. But I got that one just for the art because the artist is amazing.
Right.
I guess the thing I've read the latest was this.
What's
It was
that?
the last. It's called Low. It was an interesting end of the world type of story.
The last comic book that I got
It was alright.
was given to me, and it was given to me by Jake Black,
Oh, really?
and it was the Book of Mormon,
The Book of Mormon one.
and there was the graphic novel version of the Book of Mormon.
This is a book, and the artist's name is Ricardo Federico, and this is all painted with acrylics and with what's it called, oils, and holy crap, it took quite a while for this book to actually come out. But I don't know if it was so much him, because he had been posting page work out of this for years.
So does he?
And he'd been posting page work, and like it had already been done, and yet it hadn't come to print yet. So I don't know if they were just waiting for enough orders to come in or something, but absolutely gorgeous artwork.
Right.
And it's what I love the form factor too. I'm hoping to do I was talking with Marty, I want to do Shattered Time in a 8.5 by 11 format, because I just love that size.
Right.
A little bit bigger than normal comic book size.
Right.
But I think other than that, though, I mean, that Low book I read a couple other graphic novels, but they're more indie type of titles.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the last time I bought a mainstream comic.
Yeah. I can't think of a. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, when I was growing up, I had quite a collection. I don't even know where that. I mean, I suspect it's at Jamie's house, but I'm not sure. Might have got damaged that one time there was a flood. But I had quite a collection of comic books.
Really?
But don't know where they are now.
Don't know where they are now, huh?
Right.
Oh, that sucks.
I mean, I was a big Spider-Man fan, so I had a lot of Spider-Man books. I had a couple of the X-Men. I had all of the Night of the Sentinels. I liked that series of the X-Men. And then I had when they gave Venom his own comic book, that was the last thing I ever bought was the Venom series. I had every one of them.
Did you?
Yeah, because it was going to be a limited thing anyway, so I thought that would be kind of cool to get, because they weren't going to give him his own series forever.
I'd always go in the comic book store and get an X-Men, but then try to find something that was cool drawn.
Mm-hmm.
Try to find something, and the only reason that I really was reading X-Men for most part was because of John Byrne started. He was drawing it when I first got into it, and then Mark Silvestri was drawing it. And then I remember going to this swap meet that we used to have, and this guy was sold comic books back in this little like undercovered section,
right?
Little kind of sketchier part it seemed like, and it was
where every transaction started with "Psst."
It's what it seemed like. I remember because I wandered back in there and found it,
right?
And it was smaller than had to be small. It was tiny. I mean, me and my dad could barely fit in there when I took him back in there to show him the comics that I wanted. But it was the Frank Miller limited series for Wolverine.
Nice.
The 4-part thing, and the guy was selling them for $7 a piece. I think it was $7. No, maybe it was $3.50 each.
That might have been worth it.
Maybe. It was even back then because it was hard to find. You couldn't just go to the comic book store anymore and find it even then.
Right.
And my dad was like, "I'm not paying $3.50 for a comic book," or was it? I think it was $7 actually.
Yeah.
Per comic. So it was like 20. I remember he told me though that he would split it with me if I worked mowing my grandma's lawn. That's how I started mowing my grandma's lawn. $5 a pop mowing her lawn so I could save up enough money to go buy Frank Miller's Wolverine. But when I took him back, and I can remember taking him back in that comic book, he's like, "Where are we going?" Like, you sell comic books to kids back here,
Right.
Or because he was totally. Now, the more I'm starting to think about it, more and more, he was like comic book guy from The Simpsons,
Right.
type of guy, and
Mm-hmm.
oh gosh, it's hilarious.
Yeah. Swap meets.
But after that, I would try to find comics. I would scour the house for loose change. Go down to the corner store, buy comics.
Huh.
Go to 7-Eleven, buy it off the rack.
My favorite, or I guess I couldn't say favorite thing, was, I guess the majority of my comic book life was in Livermore, California, and there was this one comic book store that I used to go to, and it was just funny, when you'd go in there and you'd pick up comic books, the owner, would get irate sometimes, because the more you touched it, even though everything was in plastic, the more you touched it, the more you handled it, the more pissed off he seemed to get.
Oh, dude, the one when we moved to Modesto, that's the way the guy was, and because he ran a comic book store / used bookstore, like not fictional novel stuff, So it's one of those places where you buy it for $3, the novel he buys it back for $1, type of thing, and
Nice.
you just keep revolve. You come and buy 10,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah. But he seemed to hate comics. It was just nobody was selling comics in town, so he decided to create a comic book store.
Right.
And he was the same way. You couldn't look through the comics.
Right.
You didn't want touching them, and when you're like 11, 12, and you save up your money, you go buy a comic book, and the cover is, somebody doing something, and you're like, oh man, then you buy the comic and that doesn't even happen inside the book.
Right.
And you're like, what? I would feel so gypped.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, no. So I'd be like, I wanted to, I wanted to be able to check that what's actually happening in the book is actually what I'm going to get.
Right.
And his sons took over, and they were actually comic book fans, and that it got so much better when I got older. But man,
Yeah. But that place in Livermore, the guy he wouldn't let you open up anything.
mm-hmm.
You had to buy it first, no matter what.
Then when I was in Sacramento, I can't remember if I saw it on a commercial for a place called Birdcage Watt. It was in not Citrus Heights. It's over on the east side of Sacramento.
Okay.
And it was a over like an hour bus ride if I went, and I remember getting my mom to finally drive me all the way over there to go to that place. And I went in there, and all of a sudden, that was like the first true comic book shop that didn't just have comic books. They had like graphic novels, they had indie stuff,
Right.
and that's where I found a book called ElfQuest,
Mm-hmm.
which was magazine format.
Right.
And man, I fell in love with that.
Right.
And I tried to get back there. They let me take the bus. Well, my brother, after we moved down to Modesto, and I was 11 or 12, my brother invited me back up to Sacramento to stay the weekend with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back up there, spent the weekend with them, and they let me take the bus from Watt and Folsom,
Mm-hmm.
which is like in the middle of Sacramento,
Yeah.
all the way over to where Birdcage was way over on the east side.
Jeez.
And I felt grown up.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't have any fond memories of Sacramento.
Yeah. That's about my fondest memories of Sacramento's. Wow, it's all comic books.
Yeah.
Well, and friends I played with, but I think about the way kids are playing now and how we grew up playing. It was so different.
Yeah. But
We got together and played. Our version of Dungeons and Dragons was like LARPing,
oh, okay.
pretty much for the most part, where everybody picked their little role.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember, like, through my backyard, we did the whole imaginary creatures. There's a dragon, and but
Do you still have to roll dice?
no, we didn't do any of that. It was just like just walking around. It was
Nice.
adventure playing, I think, is what you would call it.
Right.
But no, Dungeons and Dragons. That was all growing up in LDS house. That was all because.
Big
Because
no-no.
because you're a wizard
Mm-hmm.
and witches and things like that. They were casting spells, conjuring up the dead,
Yep.
things like that. And so they thought that was all like super bad and
Yeah.
evil, and so they didn't want you anywhere around it.
Well.
It's the same way with like the heavy metal music, and then when I finally got old enough and I started listening to stuff, and then when I found like Black Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
When I really found out what they were singing about, it's like, man, I would have loved this stuff as a kid.
Yeah, it's funny because I had that moment with my mother. Well, I guess I've had that moment several times when I was growing up. Because I've always been kind of a quiet kid, would hang out in my room, and being a parent now, I understand where mom would, because the quieter a kid is, the more suspicious you are of them.
Mm-hmm.
So mom would, constantly ask me, when I started playing D&D, it's funny because Dalton, my older brother, he's the one who found it first and introduced it to me. He wasn't really that big into it, but I thought it was really fun, and because I was an imagination type person, from the start. My first foray into making comic books or writing stories was I was in grade school when I first started putting pen to paper and writing stories. So the first one was because I used to study insects. That's what kind of a big nerd I am. And
That is.
my first stories was about insects. It was basically two factions, bees and ants, and there was a war, and then there was the other bugs that were involved in the war, but in different anyway. But yeah, that was the first story that I wrote, and it was kind of cool because where I lived in Oklahoma at the time, basically I used my yard as the map of the world. Because in that insect world, 4 feet is a lot of space for insects, But yeah, mom would always ask me, it later, when I was a teenager, she'd ask, if I was on drugs or anything like that, or if I had done any of that stuff, which I never have, and it's funny, but when she found out we were playing D&D, that was a big concern. It's just like, because the first thing a parent does is try to figure out what the hell that is, and then, of course, her people she asks are all LDS, because her, sisters and, her family is LDS. So, she starts immediately getting bombarded with all this, devil worship, blah, blah, blah,
right,
pagan, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, there was a big thing in the 80s to fight against it for a while there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they used to have we had Fireside once a month,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember them coming and talking about it. And one of the things that they talked about was a bad sign that you would do, was like drawing knives and swords and things like that. Well,
Oh shit, that's what I doodle all the time.
that's what I doodled all the time. So my parents were always like, no.
One of my favorite things to doodle is either a knife or a firearm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm drawing guns all the time. And it's like, okay.
Right, but that's just, which is fascinating. Like I keep saying over and over in our conversations, it's amazing how the new left is the old right, and
I don't know if I believe that or not.
because not in their fundamentalness, in the way they were just fundamentally kind of like closed off, and they didn't want to, don't tell me what D&D really is about.
Right.
Don't tell me what that means. Just blah la 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 la. It's bad.
Right.
and it seems like what a lot of the left is like today. And because I mean, like I said, when I found out that Black Sabbath was singing about Lord of the Rings and things like that.
You know, it's funny because in today's speak on, you know, any type of YouTube channel or anything, you know, everybody talks about cancel culture. And that shit's been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we never really gave it that name before. But, I mean, there's always been this group of people that thinks it's their right or their duty to get rid of these things they consider bad. And it's like, no. I mean,
well, it always works.
But then there's always been that other subset of people that, you know, like I consider myself a libertarian, you know, and I'm of that libertarian belief, you know, if it doesn't harm anybody else, then, you know, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, that's how they always, you know, one thing happens and they go and they look around and see what you had. And they're like, hey, there's D&D books. Oh, that must have been causation to the
right
correlation, you know, whatever the.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, but
yeah,
I probably would have enjoyed I don't know if I would have enjoyed D&D. I mean, I love the universe stuff. All that. I loved anything like that, the mythologies and stuff like that.
right.
I don't know if I could have played the slow playing, roll the dice type of. So I still don't play those games. I never played Magic. I never played.
Well, with
those type of games.
D&D, I mean, there's a difference between a good game and a not so good game, and that it all comes down to the game master, the person that's running it. And if he's a good storyteller, then you know. But it's, you know, and it feels a lot like you know, making a movie or making a story, because you're all the different characters, all the different people that are playing are adding to the story with their personality, basically. Me, when I would play, I always tried to have a character that I guess you could say was a smart ass, et cetera, et cetera, so I could constantly, you know, insert as much humor as I could. But yeah, you know, one of those people that laugh in the face of death or whatever. You know.
Yeah, but I don't know. But I've never been like the role playing game type of character, like the stuff like.
I love it.
Oh wow.
What? Somebody on?
Sorry, Charlie Lee. Sorry about that, because we
never really looked to see who was watching or whatever.
You do, but you know, you never see anybody.
Right.
And then I looked over and was like, "Hey, wait, is that writing? It's no longer there. Really, Mile High Comics is no longer there. The one in Colorado. That place was huge."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to say that comic books are dying because they're not.
I see. It was Mile High Comics on Sunrise Boulevard. Yeah. Oh, okay. The comic book shop. It was in the like the shopping center there. It was kind of like an enclosed mall, kind of like Trolley Square here, type of a place where you could get it. You can access it from the outside, but there's also they're all connected on the inside. It's no longer there. That doesn't surprise me. So many comic book shops have been boarded up in the last 5 years, 10 years. It seems like the comic book industry is doing its damnedest to destroy comics.
I don't know.
I don't know. I listen to a lot of these guys that talk about the comic book industry today, and and I have to agree with them a little bit more than some of the other people, and just because of, part of it's we're older,
Right.
so our storylines were just stories. But they talk about interjecting politics in the comics today and everything, and
Yeah.
but they did it when we were growing up,
Oh yeah.
and it was always in there. But it was never the main issue.
But the thing is my theory is, and it's not, it's, and it's the way that a lot of things are going, as it's not really that comic books are dying out or anything like that, because they're still there and the stories are, people are still making great stories. It's that the comic book store is dying out.
Well, but that's mainly because people aren't actually the stories. Well,
Because people still buy stuff online.
but they're not as much as what they want to admit.
Right.
That's what's interesting about some of these guys that follow some of the numbers, and it's gotten so bad now that the companies that online that track the numbers are like, stop doing that too, because it's not helping
Right.
their cause. It's like, so apparently, is it Demon Slayer? I don't know. All I know is the last couple months, top 10 selling quote unquote comics in America have all been manga.
Right.
One book, I think that Demon Slayer or something or other, has outsold almost the whole comic book industry in America.
Right.
So people aren't buying American comics, and a lot of that, I think, is their agenda behind them. They're telling these stories, but they're telling the stories where we talk about the social justice warrior stuff all the time. That's the most important thing behind their identity. It's not being a superhero. It's about their
Right.
other, and those are the people that gravitated to comics when you were growing up, because you were you didn't hang out with everybody, and you just kind of
Right.
and your people were in the comics. But even if your people were in the comics, even like Spider-Man was a geeky nerd, champion his geeky nerd wasn't what Spider-Man was about.
Right.
Being the geeky nerd was just what he had to live with.
Right.
You know what I mean? He never like, his nerd class never was the most important thing
Right.
about him. He wouldn't tell you that he was a nerd before he was just Peter.
Right.
And a lot of these comics, and even the ones I try to pick up and look at, sometimes it's just clearly not written for somebody who just wants to go read a fun story.
Right.
Some are, but not really a lot.
And that's, it's funny because, I never wanted to really make the traditional comic book type thing. When I started writing this as a graphic novel, like everybody that is watching may or may not know, I started this as a series of 4 novels that, I've read the first one pretty much in its entirety now. But when I decided that I would like to see it as a graphic novel, I never wanted it to look like a comic book. Because I don't, even this that you held up before, it doesn't look like a comic book at all.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it looks more like I think, the old comic books, when you'd go into a comic book store and you'd see this wall of color of all these different comic books, with these flashy covers and stuff. I don't think that's as appealing nowadays as it used to be. You know?
Right. Well, that was their version of clickbait.
Right.
Back in the day, they did the cover to draw you to it so that you would pick it out of
the thousand other ones. Right.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, now, I mean, to me, a book stands out more if it's a nice bound, book versus cheap comic.
Well,
book.
It seems like so many people are gravitating towards that, anyways, to get their storytelling. Just because, like I said, they've disenfranchised almost. I'm over half, if not 2/3 of their. Because what's crazy is the people that are trying to establish what is written are type of people that don't even buy comics.
Right.
And that's what's sad. It's like you grow up with these characters, you love these characters, and then it's like, well, that's interesting. Let's wait, 20 years and see, or 10 years, and let's see if what I can do to your character and see how you like it, because I guarantee you some of these characters,
right? Yeah.
That's like the idea of let's redo Rent and make them all.
Rent's just a retelling of Les Miserables.
Capitalist and industry guy. You know what I mean? You could really switch all the characters up, and they'd be all over the moon, pissed off.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, at one point in my life, I thought that, in Japan and Asia, manga and all that kind of stuff is mainstream. Everybody, reads it, or at least it's not looked upon as this just for children thing. I, at one time when I was in high school, probably, I thought that America would eventually reach that point. I don't think so. I don't think so now.
The problem is
I mean,
I think where America went wrong is in our own way that we consume media. It's just like what I was talking about last time when I was talking about the whole Leave It to Beaver thing. We need more shows like Leave It to Beaver to teach our young those core moral values. But they were so cheesy and so what I call sugar laden, sweet of they're just sweet people doing sweet things, and it's so hard to watch because of the progression of Sopranos, Game of Thrones. You want the gritty, the hard, all this stuff.
You want an antagonist and a protagonist.
They were there. They were just different. We've expanded it, and it's the same thing we did in comics. We didn't just leave comics to being Peter Parker being just the cocky teenage loudmouth. Now he's older, he's got marital problems, he's doing all this stuff. The bad guys are now not just bad guys, but they're lunatics, serial killers, right? I mean, they're like serial, they're serious people. And because of that, it's like I think there's a thing in manga where even though those characters are still like the same thing, serial, they're still evil, there's still a level of kind of, I don't know how to say it. It's like the psycho crazy guy can be psycho crazy, and yet whether it's a G book or an 18 plus book, they're very close together, and they're not so far away from each other that a kid can't read. And I think we've lost the kid aspect of it, just to pander to adults, and adults kind of enjoy the younger version of things like that too. You know, it's like it's even with manga. You can go back and you can read a manga or you can watch an anime that's geared towards late teens or whatever, and you can still enjoy it for some reason.
Right.
It's weird.
Well, I mean, a lot of that stuff, I think that writers write what they like, and the public is the one that puts it in a category, whether it's for kids or whether it's for adults.
Well, you can definitely write it for an adult.
Right.
I mean, depending on how much gore you show, how much sex you show,
right,
stuff like that, you can do between G to R rated or X rated, whatever.
But I think
with the same story.
I think the writer, like I said, they just write what they would like to see, and
that's true. But I think there's a thing though that's happening where they didn't like. It's like, oh, our audience is getting older and need more, so we'll let the writers write these more advanced, older books instead of just saying, no, this is where we target our people. Just write for this, and just stay in that little niche. And I don't know if that hurt us or helped us, because that's what manga does. And so sure, there's the version of Spider-Man that's for the 2-year-old, for the 7-year-old. There's a version of him. It's not the same character, but it's pretty much him.
Right.
But there's a version for the 7-year-old, for the 16-year-old, and for the 40-year-old. And we haven't seemed to done that with ours. We'll do a Spider-Man, then you try to write a Spider-Man for a 7-year-old and a 40-year-old. And the 7-year-old doesn't want to read the 7-year-old one. They want to read the 40-year-old because it looks so much cooler.
Right.
Right? Especially the 16-year-old. The 16-year-old doesn't want to read his or hers, because the 40-year-old one is just freaking so much better, because you have to have better art on it for the older people will like it. And so I don't know if that's part of it. I don't know if that's something that's happened to the comic book industry. But
well, yeah,
because look at our book, look at Shattered Time. Who's going to read Shattered Time? I'm sure there's going to be some younger people who will read it, but our target audience is 30 plus. I would imagine.
Yeah.
Just not that that's who should read it, but I mean, it's probably who's going to read it.
Well,
just because the people who are probably watching us are probably 30 plus. Probably 40 plus. I mean, I don't know.
Like we've plus. Said before too.
I'm so freaking old.
We've said it a bunch of times. Is with comic books, it's the artwork that attracts the person first, and then hopefully the story gets them hooked.
Right. Sorry.
So yeah, that's what that would be the hope.
Yeah, I mean, like I was talking about, I don't know if it was last time or the time before that, I'm struggling with how much nudity to put into things or how much gore and violence to put into things.
I know what you mean. I mean, because even when I started this, and like I said, that's one of the things that when I was just saying that it's the writer writes for what he for what he likes or whatever, what he or she likes. But because in the second book of the 4-novel series, when I first originally started to write it, I mean, you do an outline of the entire story, and there was going to be, because of the prophecy, a man born of two races, there was going to have to be a scene where there was going to have to be a sex scene in there somewhere. And so I didn't know how deep of a sex scene that I needed to make, or whether I just needed to hint at it, or so in book 2, there's there's the whole romantic aspect of when Izzy and Garvin meet. But yeah, eventually they have to make Len.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I mean, eventually I'll get into reading book 2, and everybody can I didn't actually get into any of the sex stuff. And it's funny, of the writers that I know, people that I know personally that are into writing, anybody who writes sex stuff, because I can, if I really sit down and intentionally want to write some sex scene, something that is hot and spicy, I can do it. I mean, I know the words to make it sound as hot as possible, but it seems like and I don't know why it is, but it seems like all the writers that I know, the ones that actually write sex scenes and include sex scenes in their books, are all female writers. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is, but they have no problem in inserting these really hot love scenes into their books. And it's like, to me, I don't know, my brain argues with itself on whether that takes the reader out of the story, because it I don't know,
Yeah, I understand exactly.
Right? It's like, you're doing this really, and they used to do this in the 80s all the time with movies. You're in this action movie where people are dying, and thousands of rounds of ammunition have been expended, and all these bad guys have died, and all of a sudden there's just a sex scene for no reason. They used to do that in the movies all the time, and I was like, well, okay.
You got a break for the sex scene. Well, that's like, so there's a great movie called what's the Bruce Willis one?
Well, I can list off all his movies.
Tears of the Sun.
Tears of the Sun was a great movie.
Tears of the Sun, right? That's one where these the Navy SEALs,
yes,
and they go in to help the people in the Congo or somewhere.
Yeah, they're basically getting them out of a place.
Yeah. So
they had to walk them out.
So the Navy SEALs are in the jungle. They're being tracked by these extremists that are coming after them, wanting to kill them because they're helping these people, these Christians, these Muslims, or blah, 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 all this stuff. But they're being actively tracked, hunted, and supposedly the script called for Bruce Willis and Monica Bellucci to have a sex scene in the break, in the middle of that. And
exactly.
And the Navy SEAL guy that was the advisor on the movie, the director asked him about, would that happen? He goes, no, it would never happen.
No.
He goes, why not? He goes, because you compromise your whole thing. You're off doing that, so somebody sneaks up and kills somebody else, and that's on you, or it's blah blah blah. And it's like, so the director was like, oh, okay, cut it out. But it was amazing how that guy was so good at that film. There was so much quality crap in that.
Well, yeah, because I think that they had a good advisor, because that guy, I mean that movie, just that firefight where they're basically shooting and scooting, where they're one guy's covering and everybody else moves, and then they cover, and then so they're falling back like that. It's not like the old Vietnam movies where everybody just hits the dirt,
right?
And they're actively communicating with each other by screaming out stuff, because
that whole shot where they got ambushed from the tree line,
right?
And they're all in a line like this, and they do a peel off, and they do the peel off where they bring the gun around the back side,
right,
and over this way, so they're never pointing their gun at
right
a comrade. Yeah, it's a brilliant movie. Charlie said less is probably better when it comes to sex. If you're doing a graphic novel, leave it up to the imagination.
Right.
You know, so this was the thing that I was talking to him with last time about, and the reason why I was struggling with this, because leaving it up to imagination, well, you know, that was my reasoning for putting it in, is because
Are we still talking about sex or
yeah,
what?
I'm trying to figure out how to say this right. It seems like there's either no visuals of privates or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
or you can find hardcore stuff on, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
it's
There's no middle ground.
there's
in it.
no middle ground. There's no middle of, ooh, I saw a boob.
Right.
You know, when you were a kid, you
Right.
watched HBO or something, you're like, ha, you snuck HBO and you got to see a boob, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
and so you didn't, if you weren't actively seeking it out, you know, and you're just a kid trying to, you know, who was told, you know, if you play around with that stuff, you can lead you down some crazy roads, but you're still you're still curious, you're still,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you see it and it reaffirms things to you, you know, and you're like, hey, I got to see a boob and blah blah blah. You know, you didn't have to see hard, but it seems like now it's either all or nothing.
Right.
And it seems like they'll show these intense quote unquote sex scenes
Mm-hmm.
where they show every part of the body but anything,
Right.
and it's this long intense sex scene, you know, and as an adult you're like, well, you know what they're doing, so you can imagine all the rest of it.
Right.
But you as a kid, you kind of wanted to see the girls pop up on the beach, you know, with the bikini, you know, that were laying out there with untied, you know, and you don't see any of that anymore.
Right.
And so in order to see it, then you go to the internet, and what do they don't just see that, they get, it's full on, you know, and they don't get to just see, you know, something nice. It's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing to that poor person? You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you're not older and don't know everything, that's some of that stuff's way too hard for just a casual search, especially so high up on a search engine, right? You know what I mean? You're just like, whoa, shouldn't that be scrolled down a few ways before you see some of the stuff like that?
Right.
You know, and so that's what I meant by showing some of this. You know, I don't, you know, how far to go, what to do, and like you said, you just make it to what you
Right.
think you want to see, and then hopefully people will like it. And
Yes.
so that's what I've been doing. You know, I've gone back and forth. I've changed like the mech driver's outfit a couple times. I've clothed her before. I've
Yeah.
declothed her.
I like her naked.
I like her kind of a quasi
Right.
like
Plus, you know,
70-30.
if we insert that joke where she, you know, finally comes out of the mech and is talking to the guys, and that whole, you know, how he talked about them, like giving her a cloak or something to cover up. I think that's a great little joke.
Yeah, because I mean, people have always sought out sex throughout history. I'm not gonna think that everybody was puritanical, because we know they
No,
weren't. You know,
because
there's-
every invention that man's ever made, the first thing they do with it is, you know, because when they invented VHS, there was porn first.
right.
When they invented, you know, beta, there was porn first. You know,
Well, when they did film,
right,
when the first thing they did was film the strip tease.
Right.
I think that was the very
Yeah.
first thing that they actually filmed was a strip tease. But so you know,
I'm amazed.
it's not
that-
like all
I'm amazed
of them.
when they first made TV that there wasn't, you know, some show of people fucking on TV. But I guess, you know, but
Well, they had the standards back then. I mean, they had the whole double bed thing, you know. And,
right.
But
You know, it's funny because I don't know. It seemed to me like in the '60s and '70s, if you watch movies, you know, they weren't really good at the blood and gore because everything looked fake, even back then. But it seemed like like PG-13 or whatever. I don't even know if the rating system existed back then, but
it did. But then it had PG-13. It was just
right.
R.
Right, but it seemed
PG,
like
G.
they could get away with a lot more back then. I mean, almost every movie that I used to watch and from that era always had boobs in it. Always had some kind of sex scene in it. And even though we think it's funny now, it's like any action movie. There had to be some kind of sex scene in it.
But most of those were all rated R back then.
Right.
And so yeah, that was just like what I tell the wife, like a lot of the shows that she watches, like her Hallmark movies, they're just like Mad Libs.
Right.
You just change the vocation and change their names, and but it's pretty much the same. And I think a lot of those movies were the same way. It's just
right.
Blah blah blah. This happens, and then sex scene. Then this happens, and this sex scene. Blah blah blah.
Right.
So yeah, but but they were rated R, and they showed boobs and stuff like. Why? Because it wasn't mainstream.
Right.
And so to do it was to push it, and then you tried to find a way to get to see that.
Right.
And even if you were trying to, like me, I was trying not to.
You were trying not to let your mom know that you were watching these
Well,
movies.
no, I was trying not to let it be my world,
Right.
all encompassing.
Right.
But yet, you still wanted. You're still human. You're still,
Yeah.
And so you look. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who are stoic, and never go after that stuff and try to look at it, and
Well, what I hate,
and all the best to them, but some of us didn't have a strong constitution.
well, it's funny because what I hate more than anything is growing up with extended family that is majority LDS. I mean, I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing the LDS people, but I hate the
Bashing me.
what I hate is I remember because me and Dad, one of the things that me and Dad always had in common is Dad is he loves stories too. He was never a writer, but he was an avid book reader. He'd read 2 to 3 books a day. I mean,
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he would just suck down books like they were nothing. But what was great was we'd watch movies together. That was one of the things that me and Dad had in common, and I remember we were watching Usual Suspects. Have you ever seen that movie? Great movie.
Great movie.
And we're sitting there watching it.
One of the best.
And my aunt and uncle show up, kind of unexpectedly surprised, just visiting. And they start talking with Mom in the kitchen, but it's right there where me and Dad are watching The Usual Suspects. And, after they sat there and they were talking to Mom for about 5 minutes, they look over at me like it's my fault that we're watching this movie that Dad's obviously watching too. And they're like, how can you watch this? And I'm like, what? I'm like, this is one of the greatest stories ever told. And what they got out of that story was that they said fuck way too much.
Yeah, language. Yeah.
It's like you guys are going to ignore this masterpiece because they said fuck?
Yeah. Because...
It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, but, I mean... Because you told the story without it. So much.
Would it have been believable? No.
Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. But... I guess the question, though, is, is like... And from their point of view, it's... Do you need to see it? Does it is your life any different after seeing it? And if that type of stuff is harmful to you and how you're trying to be a person, then you wouldn't hang around it. So,
Right.
but and I've said this many times on this conversation. You know, what we're seeing now with society was to try to break that religious stronghold, that puritanical feeling of being scared of everything, and that's the problem. They were scared of everything. Instead of holding to their own tenets of what. So my growing up, I asked my dad a couple of things like, well, how come I get to make the choice to do this? And he goes, well, it's what the prophet said was, you teach them correct principles and let them govern themselves. So if I think that amount of swearing can damage you, then this is what I'm going to tell you, and you can either do it or not. It's up to you.
Right.
You know, so
Free will.
it's free will. Yeah, and so and there was times when it was like, I want to go do this. No. What? Then he stepped in as a parent. It was like, no, you're not going to go do that because that's over the line. But for the most part, though, I remember a friend of mine called when I was like 7 or 8. He's having a birthday party on a Sunday at Burger King that was right next to a mini golf. So it was mini golf and Burger King. And there was this place up on, I think it's off of Marconi or somewhere up like there, up in middle of Sacramento. They had these purple slides that went down on the
on the mats.
On the mats, yeah.
Yes.
The
Right.
The corn husk. What are they? Why can't I think? Burlap sack.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember that, and it was on a Sunday, and so I asked my dad, "Can I go?" And he goes, "It's up to you." What do you mean? I thought it was just gonna be a hard no.
Right.
He goes, "Well, it's up to you." I said, "I want to go." He said, "Okay, let me go." But it was, I was like, what? I couldn't believe it let me go. But that was part of the growing up. That was part of his thing was, this is what I believe is right, and you can live your life. But so much of, like I said, I think so much of what's happened now is having to have broken that stranglehold, and that's what I mean by the left is new right is because it's not it's the stranglehold. It's the no, you have to do it my way or no way. There's no free will, and thinking that their way is absolute God.
I think that I think that there's some people it's just born into them that they have to. Well, I mean, I actually wrote that whole paper on control. But, me, I don't want to assert my will on anybody, But there's some people that's what they enjoy, I guess.
It's
if they
almost biological to some, and
biological meaning.
I'm not going to say it. It's just going to get me in trouble.
I thought I didn't know whether you were doing the male-female dynamic or what.
Yeah. Girls just have to control everything.
That's not true. I mean, I know plenty of girls that, don't have that desire. But yeah, there's way too many of them
Seems
that
like
do.
too many of them that do.
Right.
And...
Right.
You'll hear people joke all the time saying, Western world died the day you gave the woman the right to vote. Oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
But I mean, I have actually I think I wrote this in a paper that I wrote for college, where I was doing a thesis type thing, and I was trying to show that every conflict, is started by one group trying to control another group. And you can look
A
through
little bit.
You can look throughout history, and that's pretty much I mean, of course, you can say, well, these religious wars and blah blah blah, and it was, but if you dig deeper, you can always see it's just one. It's one group trying to control another group, or one person trying to control another person, and that's where I'm pretty much I've convinced myself that that's where conflict comes from.
I think a lot of it greed, you want news, because before they printed paper money, then if everything was just off of gold and there's a finite amount, then you went over there and got theirs added to yours, and then you went over and grabbed theirs and added to yours, and you went over and grabbed theirs and added to yours, and you see the opulence of some of these things, of what you see it now. What people keep doing to get more and more stuff, and bigger parties, bigger. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of seems crazy to think of the elaborate parties they used to throw, and they had to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And
but it's funny how you can take somebody's stuff, and that may or may not cause conflict. But as soon as you try to, let's use a story reference, in Conan, when he's talking about the riddle of steel,
mm-hmm.
and Thulsa Doom tells him when he says, steel has no power. What is a sword? It's the hand that wields it that gives it the power. And he points at that woman and goes, come on. And she jumps to her death. He's like, that's power. And that's what I mean is, there's people out there that seek to not just have your stuff, they seek to control you completely.
True. Oh yeah, I mean, so you look at some of the conflicts that have happened throughout history, and you'll see this. I think the Romans were a really good example of conquering an area and then just absorbing the culture in,
mm-hmm.
but allowing like the conquered area to kind of almost keep everything status quo.
Mm-hmm.
You're just now Roman
in charge of it, right?
And pay taxes,
right?
And it seemed like they would fight for the freedom, but it wasn't until they ran into the Gauls, to the Germans, the Vikings up there, that really put up a
mm-hmm.
no, we want to be free no matter what,
right.
It seemed like as they went across a lot of places, it was we fight, but then okay, we're Roman now,
right?
They didn't keep fighting, they didn't keep
mm-hmm.
resisting,
right?
But
yeah,
and even them, they really didn't seem to,
because that's the thing,
force everybody to do their way, you know what I mean? Which was quite fascinating.
Well, that's the thing that I think that taking it back to the left is, I think that's what bothers me more about any of this is the left wants you to basically become like them,
mm-hmm.
And the whole using another story reference, the 2 + 2 = 5. I mean, that's what they want. They want you to, believe and follow their doctrine.
Yeah, it really is. That's why I say it's a lot like the flip of the right and left, because it's theirs is right no matter what, and it's there's half the country out there doesn't want it,
right?
And what's crazy is we've seen what's happened when ideologues like that want to push it. It's nothing but death, and on mass scale.
Right.
And the numbers have just gone up with each time it's happened. I can just don't imagine the scale that it would have to be on this next one. And
but yeah, I just don't understand. I mean, it's fascinating to me, the whole history repeating itself and stuff, because you look at it and you're thinking, okay, you can see what causes the conflict, and you can see what it takes to stop the conflict and all that kind of stuff, and yet conflict never stops.
No.
I mean, it's just
there's always something to bitch about.
Well, like if my theory holds water, where conflict is caused by one person or one group trying to influence and control another group, then you would think that that would be pretty easy to stop. You just I guess it would take that first group to to change their ways and not try to control another group. But I guess if that wonderful word justify comes into mind, where they're probably justified in their beliefs of changing the world to but yeah.
Well, there's a lot of that comes into it that people don't. I was thinking, they had this conversation on Tim Pool the other night about just doing the right thing, and they're like, well, it's hard to just tell somebody to do that when other people don't have the resources like you have. Like Tim, they keep saying, they take me off YouTube, I'll be just fine. I'll go sit in a van, go down, sit on the side, but he's amassed a little bit of wealth, and they're trying to say, it's easy for you to say to do that. It's easier for you to tell a cop that, stop doing the bidding of these people that are breaking the law. They're telling you to break the law, and you're enforcing it. They come up with some crazy idea of control, like you're talking about. They just want to control people and say that it's law, but it's not a law. And then when they don't do it, you send the cop to go stop them from doing it, and the cop just goes, does it. He's like, as a cop, you need to quit. You need to quit, or you need to stop voting for those people to get in the office.
Right.
And he's like, and I was just thinking, there's a song growing up as an LDS kid that you always sing, but it's do what is right. And the line is, do what is right, let the consequence follow.
Right.
Battle for freedom and spirit and might. But it's like, that's hard. That's not an easy thing to do.
Well, I'm just, it's funny because a lot of people wonder about that. If you were in the Army, or if you were in the National Guard, or if you were a cop, and you were called upon to go to a riot and stop the riot, how many soldiers or whatever would refuse? And I'm of the opinion that percentage would be low. like 1%.
Maybe. I think it's a lot more than people want to believe it is.
Yeah, because once you're in a group like that, your friends and your family are that group.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to basically walk away from that.
Well, they're also going to weed you out too. They're weeding those people out of the military,
right.
The ones that will stop, and then all they have to do is, like, I tried to have this conversation with somebody once, and all they have to do is label you certain ways,
mm-hmm.
and unless there's somebody there who knows you personally, that has credit and can stand up for you,
mm-hmm.
you're toast.
Right.
You know, and then the only other way to survive that is you have to band together with like individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But even that I don't see happening. Like, as more than what people want to believe, that a neighbor is just going to come and help you.
Right.
You know. Hopefully they will, but I'm not sure. And that's what, getting back on comic books a little bit, that was what the power of comic books were. They taught you, and that's like the Leave It to Beaver thing too. The comic book, the narrative of the comic book was not who Spider-Man was, what Spider-Man is, what Peter Parker, blah blah. The thing is how does right and wrong, how does right win,
right.
Or how does this character keep the moral value of virtue,
mm-hmm.
truth, justice, and Americans, whatever, blah blah blah, that type of stuff. How does Spider-Man keep that? How does Superman keep that? How did Batman keep it? How did
right.
And then how does Magneto break that? How does these characters break it and fight against it and want to do, and when we move away from that narrative in the comics, I think maybe that's the downfall of comic books, because that's what.
Right. Yeah.
So many people learn their moral value, a lot of moral values from comic books, a lot of.
Well, I think in stories in general, but
in stories in general, yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason you gravitate to them, right?
Right.
You find this,
and that's one of the reasons why I've often made the argument here that there are no good socialist or communist stories out there that are entertaining in the least, because those moral values aren't there.
Mm-mm. Well, that's like I tried to argue that one time about murder.
Mm-hmm.
You take Judeo-Christian value out of it, and I think you could argue that there's no moral justice. There's no moral injustice to it.
Right.
Because if it's just a matter of doing what you want to do, and it's like, well, society gets together and say that's wrong, but why? Why is that wrong? There's no, if there's no moral value to it, then there's no right or wrong to it. It's kind of in my mind. So I don't know. That's what I've been feeling like, and that's what the alt indie side of comics is still making comics, and that side is actually doing halfway decent. They're flourishing. They're selling on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, doing very good.
Yep.
Well, not as good on Kickstarter. I mean, there's a lot being sold on Kickstarter, but not those type of books, because they don't like free will stuff on Kickstarter. No, seriously, Kickstarter hired a lady to watchdog the type of material that they were allowing to be.
Yep, that's usually the downfall right there. As soon as they hire somebody to watch
control.
That. Right.
Yeah, control.
That's usually
the information.
But and that reminds me. I don't know the whole story, but maybe you can fill me in. Charles Barkley. Do you know about? He said something. He was apparently because I just saw a headline type thing. He was on a sports show, doing his regular sports commentary, and he basically said that he doesn't want to work for these companies anymore that talk about politics and all this bullshit over sports.
I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah.
I know he said quite a few things about cancel culture,
Right.
About this Black Lives Matter, about the dividing of America. He's talked about this false narrative of overly white privilege,
Right.
and some of the stuff, and he's been very vocal on it. I don't know how he stays on air, truthfully, but
Right.
well, it's because if they fire him, you can just
Right.
say it's racist.
Well, but
But it doesn't matter now, right?
Right.
That's what's fascinating now. You can be black and a white supremacist.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Which is funny because that would just be the house.
Because let's
The
face
house
it.
boy.
Let's face it. Ben Carson is a white supremacist.
The Hodge twins.
So and what's his name? Shapiro is
Shapiro is a Nazi.
right. Is a Nazi. Yeah.
Dave Rubin's a Nazi.
Right.
All these people that would be eradicated
Right.
within the Nazi party or
Well, it just cracks me up, because
in white supremacists,
gay,
black,
Jewish,
all eradicated. And somehow they're Nazis, So
yeah,
it lets you know that.
What's his name? Prager, Dennis Prager.
Dennis Prager.
And they call him a Nazi too. He's actually a devout Jew.
Mm-hmm. He's not even as devout as Shapiro.
Right.
Shapiro wears the hat.
Mm-hmm.
Wears the yarmulke. So. And the Hodge twins, those guys are hilarious.
Yeah. The thing that bugs me about the Hodge twins, it's not their content, because I love their content, but everything they do is just little 5-minute, 6-minute clips.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I want to. I like it. I like it when they're on what the hell's his name? Crowder.
Crowder. Yeah.
When they're on there, at least, although it's hard to drown out all the other voices. And they're always looking for their chance to chime in, but
well, I think with Steven's health issues, that he's asked them to be more vocal, so he had to carry the whole load all the time. I think that's the reason why he's asked that they actually do say things more often.
Well, he's practically replaced himself with that one guy. He's been the guest host that he has all the time. I can't remember. He's a comedian.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all right.
That guy's funny.
He's funny, but he's not Crowder. Why is it these guys that do these shows like Crowder? Well, I guess maybe it's just Crowder and Shapiro. I gotta talk so fast.
Oh yeah.
They're so fast. It's like I get tired just listening to them. I think that's why I enjoy listening to somebody like Jordan Peterson, because he's slower, he's more methodical about what he's saying. I halfway enjoy Rubin, but yet he's almost swung a little bit to where him and Candace Owens go right into rhetoric too much, and that's something that I guess that's what I like about Peterson and people. Some people is when
if I had to choose somebody as far as cadence and well spoken and well thought out, I'd say the best speaker that I've ever heard is Dennis Prager.
Prager.
When he talks, he's concise and and has a perfect cadence, and he's it's not too fast. I mean, Shapiro, he talks so fast, but you do have to appreciate how concise and precise and everything he says is, because he does his research. I mean, he knows everything.
Well, not everything. That's the problem, and that's what's nice about some. That's what I think. That's the thing that draws me to Peterson the most, is because whenever Peterson's talking,
Right.
is he's trying to talk about a subject, like even when he does his lectures, he's talking as if he's talking to somebody across from him.
Right.
Maybe it's this, and he's asking questions and answering them to himself with what he knows and his knowledge. He's like, well, how come this happens? Well, the research that I've done says that this happens, this happens, this happens. So if we were to correlate, can we correlate that into this? And he's having this conversation like that allows you to come along on the journey with him, and it's fascinating. It's very well done. It's I don't know. I can sit and listen to him for a while. I loved his series he did on the Bible. The first few books of the Old Testament, he did some lectures on 14. I think he did like 14 lectures on it that he has that you can watch. But what's fascinating is it's a psychologist talking about it, and your first thing is, okay, so usually those people are there to destroy the idea of God and all this stuff, and his idea behind it is, whether you believe in God or not, there's a reason why these stories have been from recorded time to now and is still around. Why? What's in the story that humanity either needs to learn or came out of? Whether it's did it come out from God, or did we create that God to establish what humanity is? And that's a fascinating concept. And then he goes through this whole back and forth of what we've learned over the last 100 years in psychology and how that fits, and it's fascinating.
That's a thing that that's another thing that bothers me about cancel culture is if you're studying philosophy, if you're going to completely dismiss religion and the Bible, if you're going to take that stuff out of philosophy completely, and just cancel it out and try to erase it or whatever, you're doing a disservice to yourself. I mean, when I read, I've read the Bible, but if you go into it, looking at it like, somebody like a Peterson does, there's lessons to be learned in the script. That's, what he's saying there. He's, you're to come to the conclusion that, the Bible's wrong because, the world isn't 2,000 years old and blah, 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 and all the things that are disprovable, to just dismiss the whole thing that it has no merit is asinine.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it comes from the Bible's wrong and everything. Why? Because my freaking aunt and uncle came over and they got upset that the F word was on TV.
Right.
But you know what I mean, though? I mean, that is where a lot of it comes from, right?
I would never blame the Bible for somebody's idiocy.
But, so.
But yeah, there's philosophy, or there's lessons to be learned from all of these things. And it's, to quote another great philosopher, Bruce Lee, you learn all this stuff, you take what's useful to you, and you discard the rest. And that was the thing is his whole philosophy in martial arts was you strip away the inessentials and the truth is revealed.
Right.
But he was a big learner, and you learn from everything.
Right.
I mean, he included every martial art that other because most people will study just Eastern martial arts, and he included fencing and all these different things from France, and from my ancestry, the Danish, the Vikings stuff. He studied all of these things. Put it all together.
Some white supremacist you are. We're going to revoke your white privilege card.
Sorry.
You can't even remember where you're from.
Right.
How dare you?
Yep. It's terrible. But yeah, I mean, it's
well, and
you cannot deny the lessons that you can learn from.
And that's what's fascinating about comics. That's what I think most people who grew up reading comics loved, is because all that stuff was in there. All that stuff was at play. All that stuff was, bad guys questioning why would Spider-Man keep fighting when he didn't have to, or why does Batman keep doing, why doesn't Batman kill? What's the moral underlying pin that keeps him from killing? Because I mean, at some point he's got to try to justify how many murders that Joker has done,
right,
after the fact of him catch him the first time.
And the whole, if he takes out the Joker, that definitely stops.
That stops. There won't be no murder
afterwards. Right.
But then it takes away his free will to change.
Right.
So I don't know. Is that the underlining?
Don't know.
Reason?
Because me, I'm more of that.
Should he not have the right to take away his free will to change?
I don't know. I'm more of a pulling from another story, because this is the one of the stories that I love, pointing out the different characters and having people choose who they're most like.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best graphic novels ever written, in my opinion, was The Watchmen.
The Watchmen, yeah.
And I'm afraid that if I have to choose a character who I'm most like, it would be Rorschach.
Yeah, I think most people want to be Rorschach.
But
far too many people are Ozymandias.
Yeah.
And far too many people think they're Dr. Manhattan. And
well, yeah, but I mean,
they think they know everything and are willing, and they're don't get me involved. Well, yeah, I'm just going to go off to Mars, and you guys can destroy yourself.
Dr. Manhattan, he became the biggest bad guy in my opinion, because he actually went along with this crazy ass, kill a bunch of people to save a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
No way, fuck that. I'm just like Rorschach, shaking my head like, how can you justify, killing this many people? It's just insane to me.
Right.
And then Dr. Manhattan, Rorschach, sticks to his guns and gets disintegrated because of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. But yeah, great book.
Well, it's great because it has it all in there, right?
Right.
It has all these characters. It has the God character who can't be trifled with the day-to-day things of lesser beings, and
right.
We see those people all the time, and then we see the people who are tired of seeing the hurt and the suffering, and so they'll do whatever it takes to try to stop that hurt and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the people who are like, well, the hurt and suffering is what makes you human, so yeah, let's try to do better, but we can't take away somebody's will to suffer if they want to suffer. And that's something that, you know, people have tried to do for a long time with
right.
And it sucks. It's kind of like something, I think gun control, can't get off politics, but gun control is a fascinating thing about that, you know, is you don't want to take the responsibility to protect yourself. You don't want to take the responsibility that if you carry something, that means somebody else is carrying something. So that means if you say something wrong or bump into the wrong person, you do something wrong. Now you gotta.
Well, you know what's funny, as far as you know, we love telling stories, and I sometimes blame. Well, no, I almost completely blame Hollywood for the gun cancel culture, because I'm of the opinion that the Wild West, as they call it, yes, there was a lot of incidents that were recorded in history of people shooting each other in the street.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, you know, the news stories that happen today. It gets into the news and it's talked about and it spreads across the country, and, you know, suddenly this one incident, you know, gets blown up to this crisis in America. Mm-hmm. You know, blah 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 blah, you know, and all this stuff gets blown out of proportion, and, you know, and then they start making movies about it, and, you know, and then it, you know, becomes even worse. And then when you look at the actual numbers, you know, it's like, 3% of the, you know, population of the world, and that's, you know, how, you know, and it's like, you know, we look at these Wild West stories, these movies and stuff, and you know, everybody back then was carrying a gun, and all of the people, you know, nowadays don't want to relive that, because, you know, they don't want to live in that cowboy movie where two people bump into each other and go, draw, partner, bang, you know. Mm-hmm. And but, you know, it's just, it's asinine that people even think that that's the way people react, you know. Suddenly they strap this gun onto their body, and they're just looking for a fight. Mm-hmm. It's like, no. People are people, whether they're carrying a gun or they're not carrying a gun. You know, they're going to be either a nice person or an asshole, and the gun's not going to change that.
No. I think that's the underlining weakness of the argument. You can tell those are the people that want somebody else to die for them.
Right.
They're not willing to, you know, they want a cop to do their fighting for them. They want somebody else to do it. Do every, you know, they're not willing to. They think that's, by unarming people, it unarms people. The whole point of arming people was to make somebody like you and somebody like Woody Allen the same.
Equal.
Right.
Sam Colt.
Yeah, Sam Colt, right? I mean,
you know, God made man, Sam Colt made them equal. Yes.
Right. You know, I mean, that I think people forget that, you know, I mean, right. and the people who need the guns the most, who are the ones that need the most? Minorities, disenfranchised, women, you know, I mean,
yeah,
people that get preyed upon, supposedly. And so what do we want to do is we want to take away guns, but yet you don't take away the predators.
Right.
You supposedly have police, but the police are only there to apprehend the predator at the end.
Right.
You can't stop the predators from happening.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going to prey. So at least you can give the little white-tailed bunny a chance against the wolf.
Right.
You know, when the wolves come.
Yeah.
I think that might be the most deepest seated racism there is when you want to take guns away from the people who need them the most, and that's because those people have never ever stepped foot into those areas of living.
Right.
They have no idea what it's like.
Right.
They have no idea what it's like to try to.
Yeah. Because
So you know what a great movie that represents that is
Django Unchained.
No.
But that actually that there was a line in that movie that I love.
What's the De Niro one? Where he's growing up in Hell's Kitchen, where his dad.
I don't know. But in that Django Unchained, there's actually a line where he's talking to the German guy, and he says to him, he says, "As long as I'm free, as long as I have my guns." And I thought that was a great line.
Right.
I thought, good job, Tarantino.
I really have become less of a De Niro fan because of who he's turned out to be.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I still like a lot of his older movies.
He's a good actor.
But where is it? So it's the Bronx Tale. A Bronx Tale.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You've seen that, right? So that's the one where he's a dad who works 2 jobs, trying to keep his kids off the street. When his kids just see the mobsters who's got the nice clothes, drive nice cars, doing work, and he's trying to teach his kids to grow up to be hardworking individuals, when they just see the mob and they're like, well, I just joined the mob.
Right.
You know, and he's trying to. So people don't understand that. And you know how the mob has its muscle? That's what it's called. It's called its muscle. It sends 2 giant goons to your business, and they just start breaking things, whether it's property or it's you.
Right.
You know, that's what physicality can do. It's muscle. It's you know, and
right.
And that movie, Big Bang Theory talked about it, but that movie, Year One, with
right.
Jake Black,
Jack Black,
and what's his name? But they were talking about the same thing. He's like, the big muscly guy's got all the girls around him. He's got like 4 or 5 hot chicks, and those 2, the fat and the little scrawny guy are over there. And he's like, this little scrawny guy, look at this great invention I made. I found this gourd, and I hauled it out, and I figured out a way to preserve food in it so we can have food for the wintertime. Isn't that amazing? And nobody listens to him. The girls are like, yeah, whatever. Oh, they go run over to the big giant guy that can,
right.
You know, and it's fascinating how you can trace things like marriage laws and things like that back to those little guys finally getting them power,
right.
and doing things like get rid of polygamy, get rid of stuff like this, so that, hey, we can get a date.
Yeah. What was that show that I think you got me into it? I only watched maybe 5 episodes, but it was that Viking comedy.
Oh,
but I mean, it starts out where these where there's this horrible sword fight, and he cuts this guy in half, and he inherits all his stuff, because that's how you
it's on Netflix.
You raise yourself in ranks there in that time period.
Right.
You just kill the guy that has everything. God, I can't even remember the name of that show. But it's fairly entertaining. But I didn't watch it for too long.
Really?
Yeah.
You gotta finish it. It's hilarious. Well, it's good. It's a lot of the Norseman.
Norseman, yeah.
That's what it was, Norseman. But it's like, One guy, he kept on saying, but it was during battle, so it's okay. And they're like, no, that's not okay. but it happened during the fight, so it's okay that happened to me, right? No, that's not okay.
That was
And then it starts off with one of the opening scenes. In the opening scene with them throwing the old guys over, like they have a population, you know,
Right.
so they have 5 old guys on top of a cliff, and they're like, look, we need to weed out
right.
the old and the sick, you know, and so we want volunteers to jump. Oh crap.
But that show,
It was ridiculous.
right? That one guy having that dream sequence,
Mm-hmm.
and champagne's being poured all over him. He wakes up and he's being pissed on.
Well, and then later what's great is the slave that's the Roman, you know, he brings culture and art to them. He finally gets that idiot that's the chief, the new chief, to he wants to create an installation, an art piece that'll make the village the centerpiece of all the other villages. You know, everybody will want to come because we have the culture. Right. So in order to make his big iron thing,
Right.
he wants to melt down all the swords.
Right. Yeah.
And they do, and then they get attacked, and they're trying to grab the sword off the thing, and it won't because it's all welded together, you know. And oh my gosh, it's amazing how they just making fun of modern day with old time stuff, you know.
stuff.
And it's
Yep.
oh man, that show is pretty good.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't even know where I'd find it now.
I think it's still there.
You think it's still on Netflix
I think
or what?
because I think it was a Netflix original,
Oh, okay.
or it was brought to America by Netflix. You know, it's one of those things where Netflix calls a Netflix original, but all it is they,
Right.
you know, it wasn't like they put up the money to make it. It was like,
Right.
oh, you made that over there? Oh, you want to put it on our channel? Ah, it's a Netflix original.
Right.
It's not like Lilyhammer, which was their first show they did, which was a Netflix original. You know, some of these other ones, Altered Carbon, a lot of them now because they're making their own. Cause they realize because what Disney did to them, Disney screwed them over
You mean?
when they decided to make their own channel, Disney Plus, and they said, yeah, we're taking everything. Everything? Yeah, everything. Not the Marvel movies. We're taking everything that's the Disney product. And they're like, what? We have licenses. Yeah, those are going to run out in 3 years, and we're going to take them then too. Whoa! And then they realized, we got to start making our own stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why they
But
went to.
but they made some really good stuff.
They went to Robert Kirkman. They gave him $230 million to create 7 shows. Woo!
But yeah, I mean,
Did you watch
I
Jupiter
think so.
Ascending? What did you think of that?
Jupiter Ascending.
Did you not see that one yet?
No, I think that's
I
the one
watched
with
it.
Mila Kunis, right?
No, that's Jupiter something. No, Jupiter Ascending is the new.
It's a TV show?
Yeah, it's a TV show on Netflix. It's the superhero one.
Okay.
It's Josh Duhamel, and he's.
Never seen it.
But
yeah. But I like some of the movies that
that's the reason. That's man, you know.
Because like
They made it 2 episodes too long. Or they didn't show us other stuff they could have showed us in the story. It's like, how come? Where's this guy? What's that happen? Well, they don't show, but they spent too long telling us how they got their powers and some of the stuff, and it was like, just get there already. And then it's like, well, Jupiter Ascending, is it Jupiter the planet or is it Jupiter the god? You know, and it's like, I was very disappointed.
I haven't seen it.
Because then they, so okay, it's that. Why? No, that's next season, which apparently we don't know if there's going to be a next season. Apparently they've canceled because you didn't tell us enough in this one to make us want a second season.
Right.
And then you took too long getting to it. So I'm sure people stopped watching 2/3 of the way through because I almost did. Gosh. You know, it's like, yeah.
Yep.
But supposedly, they asked him to create a whole universe. So that Jupiter Ascending is supposed, and then he's going to come up with other shows, and it's all supposed to be
Tied together.
in the same universe.
That's fairly clever.
I don't know if it's in the same universe as Kick-Ass, but I mean that's his too. So
Right.
Kick-Ass,
Right. That's funny.
Kick-Ass is a good show.
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
classic.
sometimes wonder what happened with that actor,
Oh,
because I mean he played Quicksilver,
yeah.
and
He's done quite a bit of movies actually.
but I haven't seen him since Quicksilver.
Yeah, he did quite a bit. You know, they were looking for him to play Han Solo there for a while, and I don't know why they didn't have him do it. I think he would have pulled off the swagger a little bit better. Actually, after watching...
But honestly, I think he's a little too good looking to play Harrison Ford.
Yeah. I actually think...
That's pretty.
After watching the very last Star Wars movie, it's like, how come they didn't have Adam Driver play him? Because he was starting to add in some Harrison Ford mannerisms in that last episode. Yeah, when he pointed, you know, there was never a time that he pointed in the other three movies. And then at the end of that movie, when he starts transitioning back into Ben Solo, he starts becoming a Solo again, you know, and he starts doing things like his parents, and he does. The stormtrooper comes and says something to him, and he turns to him and he points, just like Harrison Ford does, and he says it in the same type of. And I was just like, holy crap, that could have been. He could have.
Right.
That might have actually been pretty good. Pair him up with somebody else, with another Lando Calrissian other than Donald Glover. I don't know who, but I would have picked somebody tall. You know, they were scoundrels.
Yeah.
You know, and we were just talking about how big people push little people around. And that's what half the thing that made Harrison Ford a scoundrel in that movie is when he put that 6'2" frame over 5'2" Carrie Fisher in the Millennium Falcon and Empire Strikes Back, and he's got her cornered in that little area. That's a scoundrel.
Yeah.
You know, that's scoundrelly. You know, and then when Lando meets him for the first time, you know, he grabs a hold of her. You know, it's like you ain't going nowhere, you know, type stuff. But it's like that's scoundrelly. These two guys that they got to play him in the movie was like. Anything kick your guys' ass. They're anything but scoundrels.
Yeah.
It was gosh. I loved Chewie. Chewie was great because Chewie's Chewie.
Right.
You know, and I liked Woody Harrelson. I liked everybody else except for Lando and Han Solo. It's like I could have had the whole movie with everybody else. In fact, I wish that whole movie was just the train heist. A freaking train heist was awesome.
Yeah.
And it could have been more of that. It's like they did a great episode of Firefly that was that train heist like that. And it was, you know, you could have spent the whole thing just setting up that train heist.
Yeah.
But no.
I love all the stories on Firefly. That's one of the things that was kind of cool about Firefly is, you know, you had the overall story arc that they were going for, which they, you know, I guess put to sleep with the movie. But
what she was and
yeah, But
why they were after her.
Right, but each episode of Firefly was pretty much its own standalone story, and that's what made it great. You know, I mean, you didn't have to know the whole story. Just you know, like there's that one that I like where their ship has lost power. You know, and the problem with that particular ship is once the engine stops spinning, you don't get oxygen, you don't get anything, and so they have to get this part replaced, you know, as soon as possible, or they're just going to die. You know, and so it's a pretty cool episode.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I love the whole Reaver, where they had to go on the Reaver ship to,
Right.
you know, and was that part of that episode? Did they have to go on the Reaver ship to get the part? Because that was the only. Because otherwise they wouldn't go on the Reaver ship.
No, because what ends up happening is there is a some kind of salvage people that, you know, basically pirates that end up boarding the ship because they think it's a dead ship and they're just wanting to claim everything there, and they find because you know, it has the prostitute that lives with them has her own ship. That,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so they take off in the shuttle and leave Mal there to try and finish the repair, and he gets boarded, and he's, you know, almost dead, but you know, they try to steal the ship or whatever, and then he has to. But yeah, it's a good episode. But,
yeah, that was a good show.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, it's amazing how influential comics have been, and even manga.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, even with the popularity of the movies, it's still like you said, why aren't they mainstream? Why aren't people reading them mainstream?
I agree.
Even digitally, it doesn't seem like digital sales are where they always hope them to be. I know they trying to claim that people are pirating it, but I don't know about that, because I haven't been on a pirate site for a long time. It seems too hard to pirate these days.
Well, my question would be, do you think that with the invention of audiobooks, which, you know, let's not think that that's a great invention or anything, it's literally just some guy reading a book, but audiobooks gave people the choice of not having to read. They just listen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that increased sales of books?
Yeah, probably.
And the biggest problem with the comic book is you can't really audiobook that.
No, but the whole point is it's so visual, so
Right.
so you're visually reading it.
But I guess what I'm saying is the culture as it is now is we want things just given to us. We don't want to work for anything. So, you know, audiobooks and all this kind of stuff, you know, it's just
Well, but it's
easier.
Still, yeah, it's not, but audiobooks are expensive.
Yeah.
People don't want to work for stuff. But this new economy is actually really weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, give it to me for free, and if I like it, I'll give you some money. And
God, that's true.
but what's weird though is they do it.
Right.
That's the weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that was cool. Here's $20. What? Hey, you know, your stream's pretty cool. I've been watching it. Here's $20. Wait, what?
Right.
I was watching that Dr. Disrespect play Call of Duty. Some guy gave him $1,000.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I've seen that too, where you know, they
What?
what do they call that when somebody on YouTube
Like a super chat?
super chats? That's right. You know, somebody does a super chat and gives, you know, here's $500 for a super chat, and it's like, what?
What? Five? Not $5?
Right.
I know. But it's just like,
Yeah.
where's the disposable income? And how can't chap into it?
Right. Right.
That's like I was saying earlier. Before we started, I'm gonna have to switch my room around because we have this air conditioner that I can't turn on because it's in the same plug as my computer, and it's either one or the other.
Sucks too much power.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to.
Plus, we've never actually tested it because it sucks too much power. But I think it would be so loud that
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to hear very well.
Right.
Yeah, that's another thing too. But
we've never.
But you know
tested
that you know what though is I've watched a lot of streams when people apologize for like construction outside. Sorry, but there's construction outside, or sorry, the air conditioner's going or the fan's on, and you can't hear it at all. Yeah, I can never hear it.
But like what's his name? The Honest Outlaw. He's still my favorite guy to do gun reviews. Just a little plug there. Anyway, but the Honest Outlaw, he lives in Iowa.
Yeah,
which is a wind tunnel. Mm-hmm. If you've ever been there, and yeah, almost every episode when he's doing a gun review, and he's like, "I apologize for the wind," and you can hear it.
Oh yeah, but that's different. But that's a little bit different. Right. I mean, he can also cut down some of that with some filters and things.
Right.
But I people apologize for loud fans, and I can't hear the fans going. And what is nice though, I think with these, is we can actually cut out. Mm-hmm. Like if we were to cover the back of this,
right, and
then put a filter over it,
right, where it's,
I think we could cut out the air conditioning.
Oh yeah, and the ambient noise of anything that's behind it. Yeah.
So, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to flip this table around, which would probably put you over here, and me over there. Then
it's okay. I mean,
I just don't know if I'm gonna move this or not, because that's so much work. That table.
This thing because it has so much shit on it.
Yeah, actually, it has so much shit on it. And not only that, because of the way they're put together.
Yeah, it's a big metal monstrosity.
They don't move very well.
Right.
They're annoying as hell. We couldn't just like pick it up and move it. It all comes apart.
But I'm not exactly sure where you would. Wouldn't you have to move the bed somehow?
No, I'll just flip this. So I'll be sitting there. Well, all that does is I can put the computer here and plug it into that wall right there. Because there's a plug right behind you.
I see.
And then this can stay in this plug over here. And it should be okay then, I would think.
Sure.
No?
That'd work.
You think that'd work? Mm-hmm. That should work.
Yep. There's a plug here.
Yeah.
There's even a phone jack here.
Yeah. The only bad part, though, is it leaves the back of the computer open to the child as he comes in. Over here, it still has a hard time to get to it. I can stop him from getting over here a little bit, but over there it's going to be exposed.
I think you should just get a dog collar. One of those shock ones.
I've thought about it. But my wife won't let me.
Yeah. Damn moms.
I tell them all the time, you need to be nicer to her. She's the only reason you're still alive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That and cuteness. That's the only natural defenses that they have.
Yeah, they do something cute, and you're like, what the hell?
Right.
Where's that when you're being a pain in the ass?
Yep.
He does this thing where he like dive bombs with his head, and I have got supposedly I have 3 hernias in my stomach, 2 in my stomach,
wow,
and 1 down my groin, but 2 in my stomach that supposedly aren't big enough to need surgery yet. But I think when he hits it just perfect with his head, oh man, it hurts. And for some reason, kids they're like pinpoint dead accurate for hitting nuts. They just know how to Had to hit a nut just right. Make you cough. I heard my niece and nephews.
Maybe he's trying to make sure you don't reproduce again.
I know everybody keeps trying to tell us when are you gonna have another one. You kidding? Bad enough with this. So much
It was a shock this time.
shock. I still haven't worn off. I still 2 years later I still look at them like, where the hell did that come from?
Right.
I still am shocked.
Yeah.
We need such a bigger place.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
A bigger place. I don't know if that's true.
It'd be nice not to have my office in the bedroom.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're talking about for business, yes.
It'd be nice to have it'd be nice to have that and a better place to be able to play outside.
Right.
Because our parking lot out there is just kind of gravelly, hard, and then there's no fence, and he just runs off, and then you got to go chase him. And
well, yeah, but I mean, look on the bright side. When he gets older, he can just jump the fence and play with the
cars,
with the old cars,
with the rusty cars, and get tetanus.
Yes, get tetanus.
There you go.
That's
cut himself going over the fence because
right.
it's corrugated metal and it's got all these sharp edges on it that are rusty. There you go.
Yeah.
More tetanus. Gee, I think you're trying to get me in trouble.
It'd be perfect. Yeah, we never did paint that fence and do that sign.
Yeah.
Still got to do that sometime. I still think that'll look cool as a logo.
Yeah, it'd look cool, I think. Yeah, it'd just be interesting to figure out how to do it black and white. But
right. I think it'd look neat.
Yeah. Town called Liberty. Speaking of, I know you already have the first book written, but it would be interesting to have you write it more novelly.
Yeah, I've already started working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about it.
So then I'll vignette it.
Yeah, it's not hard because I mean that first opening scene when the that's all got the president speaking, type thing, so I can just have him saying all that stuff, which and then kind of give maybe a brief description of our history of the way the world is, and as far as how the world's set up now with cities being connected by a monorail type thing, where everybody lives in the city and nobody lives in the country.
Well, you'd have to do that in order to create vast farms.
Yeah, and my belief is in the future there won't be any private farms. Everything will be run by corporations.
Yeah, you'd have to create what I was just thinking, the Great Reclamation, where kind of with the eminent domain stuff that they had back in 1803, when they do the railroad and all that stuff come across America. I almost have to do the same thing where they just start reclaiming cities, mowing everything down to create farmland, because nobody eats meat anymore. Got to just have more agriculture, which is fascinating. It'd be interesting, that movie Interstellar, where they're having to go find a new planet because our planet can no longer produce crop. It's like, is that from overburdening the ground for just being plant-based?
Don't know, because sometimes these theories that environmentalists have about how we're destroying this or destroying that seem kind of stupid to me, because
cows just eat grass.
This
grass grows anywhere.
Right. This stuff renews itself.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I mean,
that's the whole point of
everybody. You know, is always trying to say that all this stuff's finite, and it's like, no, this stuff, you know, is not finite. Renewable farming, you know, has been around forever. You know.
What's fascinating is it's science. It's global warming. Okay. And then they're like, okay, boomer, you know, Bible, like humans didn't just start like 10,000 years ago. We've been here like for like millions of years, and like, well, then how do you explain the Ice Age? So then that means that humans lived pre-Ice Age in what, a super hot climate?
Right.
No, stupid. It's science. We're destroying the world with our global warming. I mean, are we? Or are we just getting back to what we're supposed to be?
Right.
But the polar bears. Well, maybe the polar bear only became the polar bear because of the Ice Age, and think of all the other animals that died out during the Ice Age.
Right.
Oh, we don't care about them, do you? You know.
No.
But let's get the, you know, we watch this cartoon with Leland all the time called Octonauts.
Octonauts.
Yeah, it's.
God, I'm glad I don't have a child young right now.
But it's this polar bear and this. I think it's a house cat. It's either a house cat or he's a tiger or a lion. But I think he's a house cat. An otter, a bunny, a dog.
And they're all friends living in harmony, right?
Yes. And they're vegan.
Of course.
And they live in this
dogs and cats
pod underneath the water, and they help the sea animals. And they help protect and rescue sea animals and a penguin. And they run into sharks all the time. And like the shark, he ran into, you know, the penguin who's the medic, and he's like, my nose hurts, and he's like, well, I can fix it for you, but I want to. And then he's like, I want to eat you. The shark's, I want to eat you. He goes, well, can't you hold off from wanting to eat me long enough for me to fix your nose? I'll try. Oh no, I can't do it. Eat you. You know. So the shark has just this mentality, I gotta eat you. But the polar bear looks at the penguin and be like, hey, best buddy, let's have some kelp sandwiches. You know, it's like,
yep. That
polar bear would have gone through everybody
right
already.
Mm-hmm.
You're not turning a polar bear into a vegetarian.
Right.
They love baby seals.
That's a great story.
You know, it's just fascinating. It's yeah. I love the adherence to science, and then the
total disregard for it.
Total disregard. Yes, the total disregard for it. It's just because.
Yes. So
obviously, if we were here millions of years ago, and the Ice Age has only been the last 100,000 years or whatever, then humans existed during a time when it wasn't covered in ice, so that means it had to have been CO2 hot.
Mm-hmm.
So then how were they surviving?
Right.
I guess we were just, running around in loincloth like Navis on, what's it called? What's that movie?
I mean,
with the blue people?
Yeah, I have no idea if we didn't have, if we are to, God, this is going to get into a big story. If we are to believe that there's an impact at the Göbekli Tepe type thing, and all that proves that man existed over 12,000 years ago,
25.
Or, yeah, we
Well,
don't
past 12,000.
right. We don't know for sure what kind of technology they had back then. I mean, we could have had air conditioning back then.
The only technology we know they didn't have was how to make pillars straight. I'm sorry, but it's the only thing that drives me nuts about Göbekli Tepe is how are those T's not straight? I don't understand.
I don't know.
If they had high technology like we say they would, then
Maybe they were trying to make it look cool. I have a building that they just built by my house, and they made the walls go out in weird angles just so it looked cool, I guess. I don't know.
maybe,
Maybe.
but I don't think so. Not only that, but the circle mounds that they're in are not even tight circles, which is kind of odd too, because if they were built around the same time that we think that the pyramids were, you would think they would have been built with high precision, you know. And we can forgive.
We're such nerds.
I can forgive Stonehenge for having rounded off T's and stuff like that because of the weathering from being out in the element, but Göbekli Tepe's been buried. So how come theirs?
Unless it wasn't buried until later, maybe it did go through weathering.
Then that would mean it would be millions of years old.
Right.
But
And that's possible.
then that would mean that the meteor event was a foretelling and not a after effect, or this we saw this fireball fall out of the sky when the planets were arranged so. And that's what that is. When that stela that they're showing us, somebody broke that down and we're saying, look, no, these animals all represent constellations, and the last time the constellations were in that position was 25,000 years ago.
Right.
And we believe, so why was that happening? Then they're like, well, the Younger Dryas impact in North America that created what they think the flood from the biblical times. They think that happened about 25,000 years ago. So they're trying to link Göbekli Tepe stela to that, saying that was probably recording the event of that giant meteor impacting Earth.
Right.
Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But could it be a record of the flood, but written through the stars?
We're so nerdy.
Look, if you don't like that stuff,
Graham,
that stuff is
right.
so fun.
For everybody out there
you
listening,
can be Christian, you can be
go
all that
watch
stuff.
Graham Hancock and what's his other name? What's the other guy? Graham
Carlson. Randall Carlson.
Randall Carlson, yeah.
Listen to Randall first, and then a little bit of Graham, and listen to earlier Graham, like 4 years ago, because Graham now only talks about DMT and getting stoned and talking to different dimensions and thinking that the sticks have all the answers, and all you have to do is smoke a stick and it'll tell you the secrets of the universe, and just like Joe Rogan does. And I just think it's funny that they believe that, because if as a Christian you tell them you believe something, but if you told them, hey, a stick told me the meanings of the universe, a stick, what do you mean? No, a stick like this piece of wood has them. Joe Rogan would write a 2-hour comedy special on you. But he's sitting there talking to some guy, and he's talking about psilocybin mushrooms and blah blah blah, and Joe is sitting there upright, tent, like he's in Sunday school.
Right.
Tell me about the preacher sticks, the preacher bush, and it's like, Joe, listen to what. Just take yourself out of the experience, look at it from the side, and And see, that guy's telling you to base your whole life and understanding off of Bush.
Right.
And you would write hours of material on that. It's just fascinating. Oh, it kills me.
Still.
But those religious nuts, you know.
Still.
It's fascinating.
Those guys.
But Randall Carlson, go back and watch about somewhere around 950, I think, in Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yep.
He'll have a podcast with
Both
Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, and then he'll have another one later with Carl Anthony West.
Right.
And he's an Egyptianologist who isn't a certified guy, but he knows more than, well, he appears to know more. And what's fascinating is these guys hypothesize they don't even know if the Egyptians who wrote all the hieroglyphs are the same Egyptians that built everything.
Right.
Because there's obviously two sets of architectural knowledge happening in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely the people who built the pyramids and some of the temples, that the later stuff that was built doesn't hold a candle to their craftsmanship. And so it's like, you never lose technology. You don't lose technology.
Right.
Not in lifetimes like that. You don't. I mean, look at us now. We've not lost any technology in the last 500 years. We've only gained.
But, I mean,
they're trying to tell us that they lost how to build a pyramid. Bullshit. You don't lose that. Especially for as long as it took to build them.
right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there an event that could be so cataclysmic that, like, let's put ourselves in the world of Fallout, one of my favorite video games, by the way. Anyway, the reason that I liked it is because Bethesda actually used to write stories. Anyway, but if there was a cataclysmic event like an impact, in that world, we blew each other up with nuclear weapons. Would man go in a hole and then eventually come out and just find all this stuff that's just hanging around? I mean, if there was an impact like that, how much stuff would be buried, burnt, destroyed, to where we would have lost technology?
Well, I think that movie Waterworld's a good example.
Right, because everything's flooded.
But they didn't lose technology. They just lost access to resources.
Right.
They didn't actually. The people that could get engines running again got engines running again.
Right.
I mean, they just lost access to resources.
Right.
The amount of, because you would imagine the people who go down into a hole, in order to live there, you'd have to have a pretty advanced amount of knowledge.
Right.
To
filter air and all that kind of stuff.
Filter air, grow food.
Right.
All this stuff. And so you could take a laptop down there with you with,
right,
I don't know how much information stored on it.
Right.
I know that wouldn't last forever because it's going to degrade eventually, but that doesn't mean it can't be transcribed.
Right.
Can't be written down on rock or stone
and it makes you wonder if
something.
If
hide, right?
Well, I'm just wondering about ancient technology. I mean, I wonder how advanced it may have gotten before the impact. I mean, if that's the theory that we're running on, is that there was a impact that caused an extinction event.
Well, that's why I don't know if it got so technological advanced.
Right.
I mean, the idea of being able to move massive things and things like that, I think that's something that humans would learn how to do no matter what.
Because, if you look at man, we did cave paintings. We started, chiseling stuff into rock. Then we started using paper and ink. And, we've gotten to a point where we don't even do that hardly anymore. I mean, yes, we have books, but a lot of information nowadays is found in a digital world that if there was an impact event now, how much information would be lost because all of this electronics that we hold so dear would just be gone.
I'm not sure. Just because there's so much of it left around right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of that movie, Time Machine. It goes way in the future, and there's some people living on the side of the cliffs, and they're living like Stone Age, and he's like, but we're in the future, and blah blah, and they say there's these old civilization, so he treks across the desert, he goes, and he finds, I think it's the Library of Congress, and there's a computer there, and nobody understood to say, computer, access this book or something, and it, boom, 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 here you go, here's all this knowledge and information, and they lost the ability to read it, but the computer could actually read it for them, but they didn't know how to do all that stuff. It just seems, I don't know, it's hard to imagine. I mean, I understand getting to the point where your day-to-day is just survival, but there comes time when there's day-to-day and you have enough, and then I'm going to go look for something. I'm going to go find this. Or you come across it where you're out and about.
Right.
It just seems like there's so many libraries around the world that I know that there are not as many, but between homes, the amount of books that people have in homes, I don't know. It'd have to be pretty massive extinction.
Right. That's what I'm wondering. I mean,
and even still, I mean, could it have to be an extinction? But it have to be. There has to come a level of destroying all the materials. That's the.
I mean, an impact. I mean,
the only other way is you go about 4,000 years in the future, where we no longer have anything paper, anything written down. What you do see is just being projected by a chip in your brain.
Right.
So if you do see something on the wall, it's just, it's a computer generated image.
Right.
So we don't actually have anything physical anymore. We've gotten rid of all of that, and then something like that happens, and then your computer don't work no more. You have no physical things left over.
Right.
So maybe. But even then, if you don't know where the vaults are at, I mean, we still have stuff stored underground in big vaults that we've.
It'd be funny if we found out that, it took us seems like forever to realize that the Easter Island heads were actually connected to a body. And it's funny, we finally dig down and we find out that all the secrets of the past life are down there in some computerized vault. And that was just a marker.
It could be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they talk about how the waters have risen over the last couple thousand years. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's, what was lost at Alexandria? Obviously not enough, because whatever was, unless they had books that they couldn't read.
Right.
But one thing the humans do, though, they just don't write things. They schematic things. They break things down with pictures, and so even if they couldn't read it, they'd still be able to look at stuff and be like, what, you know, that's a machine, or that's you know, it'd be fascinating.
Yeah.
What I think is fascinating though is when they got down to the bottom of those Easter Island, Rapa Nui things, you know, and those statues, those guys have their hands down the side of them with their fingers wrapped around their hips, and their long finger wrapped around their hips. And you go back to Göbekli Tepe and those stelas, they have figures on there long, the same finger wrapped around their hips. Like it's not like quinky dinky either. It's like that's fascinating. I mean, opposite ends of the world, and they're the same figure.
Right. Which, you know, if you were to translate that into nowadays time, that means it was either the same artist, or that was just the
universal code,
accepted, you know, art form.
Well, you go anywhere around the world, and you know, a Christus, a Christ hanging on the cross, is going to be the same no matter where you go.
Yeah, true. Could have been a religious thing, yeah. Nerd.
Well, I love that stuff. I love archaeology stuff.
Me too.
That stuff.
It's stories. It's still story related.
Stories, yeah. It's just
because I mean,
well, and I love the whole mud flood stuff too. If you've gotten into that, that'll
which
really.
one?
Oh, it's just mud flood. It's just the whole back east.
Oh.
Has been covered in a flood.
Right.
And they talk about that with, you know, right now we're going through this the Great Reset. But 2 years ago, you look on the internet and you look at what the Great Reset was they were talking about, was it the 1500s? They rewrote a whole 1,000 years. They're saying. They're just like, they just got rid of 1,000 years of history and reset it. And that everybody was okay with that. Like, they got rid of this. If you looked into the Tatarians,
no,
that's a fascinating one. Looking at that Tataria, there's a whole country supposedly that's just been, and people that's just been swept away in history. There's these flags that they have recorded in these books, you know, of country, of these Tatarian, and it's like all of lower central Russia and area, and this whole big old side thing, and a lot of architecture was influenced by them supposedly, and all this stuff that's all across the world, and then gone. They just disappeared as a people, as a culture. It's just gone.
Well, here's a theory that I'll try and present and see if we have once witnessed we may have witnessed it more, but one instance, that I'm thinking of, we had a point of time where a group of people wanted to erase another group of people completely from history. And we fought World War II over it. And they tried like hell to kill off the Jewish race and to erase their history. Didn't work. But I'm just wondering, if we go back way into the past of man, into that other life, if that kind of stuff, like the Tatarians, if somebody was actually successful.
Oh yeah,
erasing.
It's happened over several times. Well, Conan is supposed to be a Cimmerian, a Chimerian or something like that. There were people. There's actually tons of different that got absorbed in other things, but this is actually really interesting. They're talking about they got absorbed to the fact that now nobody talks about Tatarian culture. It's kind of really spooky. The mud flood stuff is that they started doing like architectural stuff where they're fixing buildings back east and stuff. And as they started going down, they found that the structures and that there's roads actually 15, 20 feet below where the road is built right now. And they'll see that the building front goes down there, and then they just kind of like refabricated, like they put the front door on the second floor, and then was like, oh no, that's how it was now. And it's, I know, it's kind of fascinating. Like they were showing this one building, I can't remember what it was, but all I know is they showed the ground line going through the middle of the window. And been in a lot of basements. I've always seen windows are always above the ground line. The ground line never cuts through the middle of the window. And it's like, that's weird. It's like it was either a flash floods of muds that covered, or the city's sunk. And
most likely a flood.
So but it's a thing that's not in recorded history. And that's what puzzles people. It's like, why isn't it in the town history that a flood of mud buried half of it, and then there's 1,000 years, I think maybe from the 1700s or 1800s, there's this 1,000 years of supposed history that just seems to be
gone.
And then all of a sudden maps start showing up with these little something with this little eye behind it, like this. And it's supposed to, in their mind, it's the new history. It's this weird thing, because it's like you don't see it, and all of a sudden it starts showing up, and then it goes away again. But it's like, here's the revised. It is weird. It's a good rabbit hole. It's a Gobekli Tepe rabbit hole. It really is. You can just have some fun, because you don't have to believe it, but it's just like, and then, because what's great is when you try to explain it to people look at you like, which Marty was doing, right?
Like,
he's looking at me like, come on. But it's fun, dude. Just go look it up. It's hard to look up the Great Reset anymore, because all you get is the new financial reset that they're wanting to do. And so, but I think if you start like with the Tartarians, that'll lead you down through that rabbit hole to that stuff, and it's quite fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Which is what I'm not. Oh, it's starting to get warm up here.
Yeah.
It makes you really feel like, for those guys that started those podcasts way back in days, out of their garages, they didn't have air conditionings in the garages, but they're like, let's do a podcast. Okay, so they put up a green screen in the garage. They got rid of the, they no longer park a car in the garage. They turned their garages into their studios. And I remember that Totally Rad show that I used to love. That's what they did. And so for the first first month or two of their shows, they were just in there just glistening, because it was just, they didn't have air conditioning in the studio. And eventually, I think, built walls in there and cut it, and made a little room and put air conditioning in there. And
it's not hard to put an air conditioner in there. Anyway, but that's okay. We've killed 3 hours anyway.
Yeah, well, 2.5.
Yeah.
And we want to thanks Charlie.
Yeah.
For coming on. So please come again.
What was the last thing he said there?
That was about the sex. Probably less is better.
Right.
Leave it to your imagination.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did.
And that's true.
In the second book.
I think that's true. I'm just talking about sporadic images sometimes here and there peppered in of stuff. It's like, ooh. It's not like, because if it's just all the time, then it's just like the porn. It's just, it's just overindulged, but nothing, and then it's a, I don't know. Sometimes it's a little healthy release.
Well, the thing is I mean,
I don't know. I don't
know if
I don't know if it's good or not.
In the second book, I mean, like I said, if I want to, I can write a very erotic scene, but you have to ask yourself, does it do anything for the story?
Probably not ours, because it's not based on that.
Right.
Now, if it was more Games of Thronesy, where
Right.
we were really just we're in that world now, and then we're just following all these different characters that are making connections and doing that, then there's difference, because you know, like, we're the idea of kicking around Paul and the mech driver getting together, you know, but you build up to a scene, you build up to that, to where, you know, that's the release for the reader, is to see stuff. But that would have to be inherently part of the book, is the relationships, is natural things that humans do. They have sex, they go to the bathroom, they eat, you know what I mean? It's one of those things in books or like in movies, you know.
That's what we should do, is write a story that's based on the great shits of history.
The great shit. I was reading this book about how in medieval times one of the places of power was Malta, the island of Malta,
Okay.
because it held trade route into Jerusalem.
Okay.
And so there was lots of wars on it to hold power there. You know, if the Muslims could hold it, they could keep the Christians out from supply routes and blah 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 blah. And so this book talks about one of the battles that happens there, and they're talking about these guys up on the ramparts just fighting for hours, just in the blistering hot sun, just sweating, you know. And there's a break in the combat to move dead bodies out of the way, whatever, just a break, right? And they're talking about guys fighting, and then there's a slight break, and they just drop trow and crap right there when they're fighting. So they're just fighting in blood and shit. And you can only imagine how just nasty it must be. But that's the bodily function, is just being like, hey, it's got to do what it's got to do, right? Doesn't matter that you're having a battle right now, you know.
Right.
And it's like, did I need to know that? No. That's an interesting thing about history that you don't really think about. You don't think about in something like that, you know, you're out there, clink, 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 clink. Time out. I need to go to the bathroom. Can I, you know. No, you're clinking, clinking. You're you know.
Right.
Damn, if we hadn't stood over there for 3 hours just waiting for an arrow to launch, you know.
It's like, I had 5 cups of coffee before this.
Didn't you go before we started? Yeah, but that was 3 hours ago, damn it.
That's funny.
Yeah, you know, this type of stuff, you know. My nephew has his best friend, they've written a story that's evolved, but they have this idea, this no-name henchman, this super henchman. Because nobody ever does stories about the henchmen for supervillains.
Right.
And it's hilarious. I mean, if they did the comedy side of it, it's freaking hilarious. I just love the idea of henchmen, you know. But it's like henchmen. They're just standing there. No. Damn, I gotta go. But you gotta protect the boss. But damn, shit, you know.
Right.
This is one of, another. You know, I just love this idea. I kept on pulling this idea. I wanted to do this because it's based around henchman school. Going to like university, like to learn how to be a henchman for the Joker, for the Riddler, type of stuff, you know. And they go to the worst one, right? But this one guy, he's the shit. And I was like, in my mind, he needs something that makes him not become a boss. But that's different. But I was like, you know, it'd be hilarious. Is I keep talking about this idea, these motels that turned into apartments that are to 2-story things that center around a pool.
Right.
And they're always like all the screen doors are always on them and always open, you know, and blah blah blah, and the pool's never filled up, and I always thought of this one guy who's always like standing in front of the mailbox waiting for his call-up letter, you know. As the hero comes home every day, that dude's sitting there, hey Louie, hey so and so, did you get a job day? No, didn't get one today, you know, just like, but that sorry sack of a
Right.
of a henchman is just,
Or do that scene from History of the World Part 1 where he goes to the unemployment office.
oh yeah,
And she's like, okay, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a stand-up philosopher. A what? A stand-up philosopher. She's like, oh, a bullshit artist.
bullshit artist.
He's like, did you bullshit today?
No.
No. Did you try to bullshit today? Yes.
Like I said, I love watching those reaction videos. I thought about it. I was like, we should do those, but there's not really movies that neither of us haven't seen.
Yeah.
We've seen so many of them that it'd be too hard to find something that neither of us have seen
Right, and do a reaction video.
of worth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we could do commentary, but I don't know how we do even commentary over it.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, we could sit and watch it, but it'd probably just be us laughing at shit.
Right. Did you bullshit today?
Yes.
Well, the thing is, you know, what's fun.
What's great is that's Maud. That's isn't that it's B. Arthur, isn't it?
Yes.
I think it's B. Arthur.
Yes.
So I mean, you talk about bullshit. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
she's great.
She's and she has the way she delivers stuff too.
Right.
You know, did you bullshit?
Did you bullshit
Yes.
today? Did you try to bullshit today?
Those are good movies.
Yes. Mel Brooks is a genius. Anyway, should we wrap this up?
All right, let's wrap it up.
Um,
Thank you for hanging out.
yeah.
Thanks for talking. We appreciate you, Charlie.
burnoutstudios.com.
Jam Spoon on Twitch. I probably should change that, but right now it's Jams. I'm gonna try to start streaming. I gotta move the computer around so I can actually stay up here with the air conditioner on. Because right now, there's no way I'm sitting up here in 100-degree weather and just roasting.
Right. Yeah.
Because I would have to sit in something that people don't want to see me in. My birthday suit. Even then I'll just stick on the leather and sweat.
Then
and
you
pool.
could
Ugh, gross.
you could change the name to The Naked Artist.
Yeah. What's a fat guy? What's a naked fat guy? There you go.